we're gonna show you a really good, quick, easy, safe product removal. So I'd just like to push back that cuticle and get that kind of out of the way. Always make sure that you check underneath before you do your removal or clip them down so that you're not going to be cutting into that hyponychium under there. If she had a longer nail, I would come through and I would clip off the free edge. Now because she doesn't have a whole lot of free edge, I don't necessarily have to clip. But if she did have a longer extension, maybe something like mine, I would clip that free edge off first and then we could go into our removal. I'm gonna work with my electric file, and when I do a removal, I do as much filing as possible so I don't have as much soaking to do, if any, okay? Now, we're gonna start at about 15,000 RPMs, and you'll notice that I use kind of a circular motion with my bit. I know a lot of people like to pull forward. For me, that circular motion I feel like is going to cover more space. It's also going to use more areas of my bit so that it doesn't heat up. So again, just kind of that circular motion, and you can see I'm kind of moving in different areas. And I actually kind of break the nail up into kind of quadrants. So 1 quadrant, 2 quadrants, 3 quadrants, 4 quadrants. So that way I'm kind of working in that area, and then I work to a different area. And you can see already it's starting to come down.
I mean, that's all. Yeah.
So she's got fiber gel on here, over a little bit of a tip left on there, right? Okay. And so whatever product you're using, it's going to be a similar removal process. Now, because she's got that fiber gel on, we're not going to be taking down a lot of product.
Right.
If you had maybe acrylic or hard gel, we may have to do a little bit more work to take that down. But again, it's basically that same technique, okay? And then again, if you're going to soak off the rest of it, then you can soak off. But by thinning this out, it's going to save us time on that soak off, and then we're not going to have the fingers in acetone as much. If you feel like your client starts to tense up, like if you were to kind of tighten up your nail or your finger, see, just like that, I know that something's not quite right. At this point, if you were going to just be changing this design out, I could go through, reshape her nail, clean all of that up, re-prep the nail, and then go into my reapplication. Now, if I'm going to soak off the rest of this, I want a nice textured surface. So I'm going to switch over to my sanding band. Okay, so when you're going to do a full soak off, the more texture to that nail, the easier that is for the acetone to get in there.
Yep.
So we're going to turn this down to kind of our prep speed, and I'm just going to go through that whole surface, and again, just like we were prepping, just flow all the way through. But you can start to see that product breaking through, okay? When we're doing a removal, we really want to make sure that if we have product breaking through where that natural nail is showing, we don't want to go over that spot again because we don't want to damage any of that natural nail. Making sure there's no shiny spots, because any of those shiny spots, again, are going to keep that acetone from getting in there a little bit. Okay. But I think we are good to go. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of dust it off. So again, you guys, you can see there's not a whole lot of product left on there, a little bit around the edges and a little bit through kind of those thicker areas. So to fully remove that, if your client, if Kira wanted to take all of this off, that's where I'm going to start with my soaking. Normally, I don't like to do a lot of soaking off because, again, it can dry out the nails a little bit. Acetone is going to pull a lot of that moisture out of your nail. So that's why we want to file the product down as much as we can, take as much of that off so the less time we're going to be in that acetone. Okay, so I just took one of our lint-free wipes. Cotton works great too. With the lint-frees, I kind of like to separate them a little bit more. I feel like it holds the acetone a little bit better. So we're going to take a little bit of our onto the next and just a regular piece of foil and really saturate that wipe with the acetone. All right, so our wipe is completely saturated. You can see it's dripping wet. We actually want that much acetone. Okay, the more acetone, the better in this situation. I'm just going to wrap that up. Keep it nice and tight on there. Okay. And then I'm gonna let this sit. Now, if I were doing a full set, I would go through, I would take down the bulk on everything. I would go through with my sanding band, remove all the shine on it, and then wrap each one individually, okay? Now, another reason that I like to use the foils rather than actually sitting in a bowl, and this is something that people...
Oh, it gets so cold.
It gets cold. It gets really cold on your fingers, but then it's also, so if your fingers are sitting in a bowl, and you take them out and you start to work on one, what happens to the rest of it?
It dries.
It dries,
yeah.
okay? So that's a lot of times why soaking in a bowl is gonna take longer for that removal, because you're gonna work on one, the rest are gonna dry, you're gonna have to put it back in to soften up that product again. So she actually didn't have Protein Bond on that whole nail. So this is gonna soak off really easy. But again, if you had Protein Bond on the whole nail, it's gonna take a little bit longer. So you guys kind of keep that in mind as you're doing your removal of gel polish or fiber gel. If you had that Protein Bond on the whole nail, it's gonna take a little bit more effort to get that product off. So we're gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll go through and do the rest of the removal process. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes or so. How's everything feeling on you?
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay. It's all good. Okay, so we're gonna just slide that off. And again, you're gonna do this one nail at a time. So you're gonna see that that product has started to soften and kind of start to flake off. I'm just gonna gently use my implement here, and I'm just gonna lightly kind of slough off any of that product that has dissolved. Now, I don't wanna be using a lot of pressure, just lightly over the surface, because I don't wanna be scraping those layers of your natural nail off, okay? So I can see there's a little bit of that tip. I see that little shiny spot. So that tells me that there's a little bit of that tip left on there. So I'm gonna come back through. I think the rest of the nail is pretty well cleaned off. I'm gonna come back through with my 150 grit file, just very lightly right over that surface. And if it takes it off completely, we're good to go. If you still have a little bit of product on there that's not dissolved, which I think there's just a little bit, I could file it off, but for demo purposes, we're gonna put the foil back on. So if you do have a little bit of product still stuck on there, what I usually like to do, let me switch this out of the way, is I'll open up my foil again, grab a little bit more of my onto the next, and we'll just rewrap that for just a few more minutes, maybe like 5 minutes or so. So again, on something like this, I would rewrap it and then go on to the next nail. Okay, so we let our foil sit just a few more minutes, and it looks like everything has dissolved, so it's gonna come off really nicely now. Now, be careful though. I've seen people kind of dig into that and just kind of get their tool underneath that and pull that off.
Take some nail off.
That's exactly what's gonna happen. So make sure that you're just gently sloughing off the product that's dissolved. And then again, I'm gonna just hit this with my file one more time, and that I think is gonna take off those last little bits that are on there. All right, I think we are good there. If we're gonna just be finishing this nail and sending the client away with just her natural nails, I would come to my 240, and I love these. It's the file buffer combo. They work so nice, and it's like one less tool that you have to pick up because they've got the file and the buffer. Now, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna, again, kind of check her cuticles a little bit. There's a little bit of that product kind of stuck down, that dissolved product stuck right into her cuticle area, so I wanted to really make sure I remove that. And then I'm gonna start with my 180 buffer. Again, just to kind of make sure that all of that product is gone. Give her a nice smooth finish. Now, if you did have a little extra cuticle in there, you can come back in with our diamond cuticle square bit. So I'm gonna get that on about 4,000 to 5,000 RPMs, and then I'm gonna just come right up around that cuticle and kind of clean that up. So I think we're good on there. And then I'm just gonna follow through one more final time with the buffer side here, just to get a really nice smooth finish. Just buffing out just a little bit to give it a nice smooth finish. We'll cleanse with a little bit of swipe just to get kind of some of that dust off of there. But I am gonna finish with a little bit of our rose oil, especially after soaking in that acetone. You really wanna make sure that you're reconditioning that cuticle, reconditioning that natural nail.
Thanks.
Okay, so there is our removal. Quick, easy, no damage, and her nails are looking good.